Hello everyone, and welcome to the Startup Creasphere APAC Demo Day as part of our Plug and Play APAC Summit. My name is Kayvon Deldar. I am the director for the Startup Creasphere APAC program here in Singapore, and I lead our InsurTech and FinTech practices here as well. 4 years ago at the Plug and Play headquarter office in Silicon Valley, we created our first ever Health Accelerator program where we sought to connect leading health tech startups globally with corporations in the healthcare industry. Since then, we've expanded that platform globally, including to locations like Munich, where we launched our first Startup Creasphere program with our founding anchor partners Roche and Sanofi in 2018. From this initial engagement in Munich, we expanded our partnership with both Roche and Sanofi into Singapore and the APAC region, and together in August, we launched our first dedicated healthcare accelerator program in Singapore, and we have 6 startups as part of this inaugural program. And this is the demo day where we'll be hearing from all 6 of those startups. As part of the 3-month program, both Roche and Sanofi have been exploring pilot opportunities with these startups across the APAC region. And on the back end, our Plug and Play team has been working hard to run a number of events for these startups, including mentorship sessions and cross-border networking events, including an event that we did with our flagship Plug and Play Creasphere office in Munich. We have a great lineup of speakers and startups for you today, and we really hope that you enjoy this event. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to our Startup Creasphere APAC Summit Demo Day. To kick off the event today, we have an amazing panel with 3 esteemed leaders from our corporate partner network from both Roche and Sanofi. To introduce each of the panelists by title, we have Lance Little, who is the Managing Director of Roche Asia Pacific for Roche Diagnostics. We have Rachel Frischberg, who is the Area Head in Asia Pacific for Roche Pharmaceuticals. And we have Veronique Ebb, who is the Global Consumer Healthcare Head of Business Development and Licensing for Sanofi. And what I really like about the panelists today is that we have a lot of different perspectives from 3 different core areas in the pharmaceutical and healthcare space. So very excited to hear their thoughts on creating the digital partnerships and forging the future of healthcare through partnerships, which is the title for our Fireside chat today. So before we get started with our questions today, we'd like to give the opportunity for each of our panelists to introduce themselves very briefly. And Lance, we can start with you.
Thanks, Kayvon. Look, it's a pleasure to spend some time with you all here, and I hope the program's going very well. My name's Lance Little, as was indicated earlier on. I'm the Managing Director for Roche Diagnostics Asia Pacific, a geography that encompasses a little more than half the world's population. And within Roche Diagnostics, we have 16 legal entities serving the diagnostic needs across about 21 different markets. So look forward to the conversation upcoming.
Great. Thank you, Lance. Rachel?
Hi, great to be with you today, and looking forward as well to see the progress that's been made later on. I'm Rachel Fritzberg, Area Head for Asia Pacific for Pharma. So not quite the same footprint as Lance, because we have slightly different geographical structures across pharma and diagnostics. So I cover all the countries with the exception of China, India, and the Indian subcontinents, and have very, very excited about looking forward to the dialogue that we'll have and thinking about how we can closer partner together.
Great, thanks, Rachel. And last but not least, Veronique.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Really happy to be here as well and to participate to this event. Very excited to see the developments as well of the day. So as you mentioned, I'm Veronique Ebb, and I'm the Consumer Healthcare Global Business Development Head for the Nutritional Health category, which is one of the 4 key categories of the consumer healthcare business at Sanofi. I'm at Sanofi since 4 years. I'm embracing different roles in business development until now, in global and local positions, always in business development, and with a background in FMCG. So really happy again to be here, and really excited.
Great. No, it's our pleasure to have all of you three esteemed leaders as part of this panel, and we're looking forward to hearing your perspectives. Before I move on to my first question, one key note for the audience is that if you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there is a function to ask questions. So if you have any questions for our panelists, please feel free to let us know, and I'll try to get them to them. We only have about 25 to 30 minutes for this, so we'll get started for the first question. So the thesis of Startup Creasphere is to connect these large corporations, in this case, Roche and Sanofi, to startups all around the world. And since we're talking about the future of healthcare through these startups partnerships, I would love for you guys to share your perspectives as leaders of your respective organizations on how you view interactions with startups, how this plays a part in your innovation strategy, and for the corporations in our audience, whether it's in the healthcare space or in another industry, what are the key factors that you feel like they should be keeping in mind when they're collaborating with your organizations? And Lance, we'll start with you.
Sure. It's a big question, actually. Let me try and make a start. I think if we look at health, we've got to understand that there are so many opportunities. There's so much more that we don't know than what we already do know. So if we're going to continue to push the boundaries and solve many of the unmet challenges of health, we have to do that in a collaborative way. That means collaboration across existing organizations, corporates, if you will, as well as the startup environment. A lot of the innovation is happening not just within corporates, but most of it is outside of our own organizations. And so partnerships with respect to innovation is key for us. And I think, my own personal view and the value of driving the Creasphere into the APAC region was really to unlock that. Particularly with respect to the digital play within healthcare. I mean, healthcare is being transformed. Digitization is a driver for that. And being connected with that, we all need to learn together. And I think this is extremely important. There's a great source of inspiration from the startup environment. In a corporate world, we have to make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, if you like, before we can move and push products out into the market. And there's nothing wrong with that, because we're all in health, and if we get it wrong, potentially somebody dies. So that level of concern to make sure we get things right is important, but sometimes it can be too far. The value of a startup is often it drives some hunger and some innovative thinking that moves the multinational in a much quicker pace. And I think this balance between the two is very important and very valuable for everybody involved. I think with regards to guidance, one of the things I think is very important is we're looking for synergies. We're looking for areas in which we can collaborate together to really make a difference in a particular field. Often we may have overlapping work that's being done, and in which case there might be some complementary work value in working together, but particularly if one party can bring a piece of the jigsaw that the other party doesn't have. And very rarely in health does one party have the entire jigsaw. So I think this is one of the elements, is to looking for synergies. And there is so much opportunity out there. Don't get drunk on the potentials. We all have to deliver well within healthcare. So choosing the opportunity, building and developing a product that executes and improves the standard of the care, and provide a focus to do all of that, I think is also a key element in order to be successful in health. There are fantastic ideas that have existed in health over the years, over the decades, that have never made it into the hands of people that can do good with it, because people got distracted along the way. So focus is also a key element. And certainly, the Creasphere experience that we're going through at the moment, I think is a learning for all of us. And I think that learning is absolutely fantastic. So be open-minded, be curious, and find ways in which both parties can work together.
Great. And as a quick follow-up to that, and I like the jigsaw puzzle analogy that you talked to about finding the right pieces that fit together. But for the startups that are perhaps listening in, that might be part of Perspective, Creasphere programs that are interested in particularly about Roche Diagnostics, is there, I guess, one core piece of advice you'd offer them in terms of working with your with your team and organization?
It's very difficult. I think very often we come from different lenses, quite different lenses. And I think the value is to be able to learn, be open-minded, bring your startup perspective to the table. We absolutely need that, but also respect the view of the organization who's been there before. And is there every day. So there's lessons and learnings on both sides. So I would say that the number one thing is be open and curious and respect the fact that both players bring value to the table.
Great. Thanks, Lance. Wanted to turn it over to Rachel to talk about more about Roche Pharma, as well as the role that startups play and partnerships for your organization as well.
Yeah, I mean, first, maybe just to build on what Lance was saying, I think the two pieces also that come to my mind is the be yourselves and be open-minded. So the be yourselves, I think there is an element of there's a reason why we want to partner to really look for the innovation, the creativity that's coming in. But at the same time, because we'll have a certain view of the world, to challenge us and to sometimes challenge our thinking as well, because I think from that comes different possibilities. And I think the open-minded, I think as Lance said, it's really important to have focus, but on the other hand, when we're thinking about sort of, we cover many different disease areas, many different perspectives, and we might go in with a certain lens to focus on a particular disease area, but maybe there's opportunities to scale an idea broader, just to think slightly differently about it. So it's not trying to contradict the point of focus, but it's also at the same time, I think the more there's this open communication and collaboration, then you see sort of more possibilities. So then coming back to the other point as to, what's the perspective from Roche Pharma? I think very similar to what Lance has already talked around really that we're looking for really broadening our collaborations and partnerships. And because what we want to be able to do is to take the lens of, how we can, we have a vision of how we can bring more medical benefit at 50% of the cost to society, which is a really bold vision. And with that, we just can't achieve that vision alone. So we need to think around how is it that we can bring more value to the patient, to society, to the healthcare systems. And we will have, and with that, so through these partnerships, we can bring more value. I can give you an example. So we were working in Singapore with, like a startup company who was more or less like a Tinder company for clinical trials. And the more that we started to work with them, we could see that where they were trying to match clinical trials with patients, they had the technology to be able to do that in the specific space of oncology. Of course, then there was this opportunity for us to be able to serve more patients and bring more patients into the trials than we would have done versus if we'd have taken, our standard approach there. So, I think it just brings a lot more innovation and creativity to our business and the value that we can bring.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. And I love the specific example you gave as well. So thanks for shedding light on, I guess, like a sample of just the plethora of opportunities that exist within your organization. I wanted to pivot over to Veronique. Similar questions in terms of how startup partnerships fits within the consumer healthcare team at Sanofi's strategy, and maybe how, from Lance and Rachel's perspective, it might differ given that you're dealing with a large number of consumers at the end of the day.
Yes. Thanks. In fact, I think I'm strongly aligned with what has been said as well, even if the perspective from consumer healthcare, of course, might be slightly different, but I strongly believe still that the interactions and interdependencies, between startups and corporations can only intensify moving forward. If we take some areas which we are looking at from a consumer healthcare perspective, like personalized nutrition, for example, market, it's a market which is mainly, if not to say only, driven by startups at the moment, with the backing of few organizations and very little acquisition, as you might have seen, from Bayer recently taking majority stake, in care of. But the reason why it's mainly driven by startup is because this type of market require not only innovative technology, but a certain organizational setup, and most importantly, capabilities and agility that we do not have as big organizations. So this, and also because it's breaking for sure the rules of traditional business as well. So these interactions, I believe will continue really to strengthen really over time, especially as both parties can really take, mutual benefits and gain competitive edge one from the other, whether we talk about innovation, about reputation as well, about scale-up opportunities, market understanding, consumer knowledge. But what I believe as well is that the reason why, startups and corporations might find mutual interest to work together might also be the reason of failure to some extent, when there is too much, cultural gap, for example, or a gap in terms of expectations, usually in terms of time frame or financials. So if I would take a learning for both startups and corporation, it's really about taking the time right at the beginning of the collaboration to really understand each other's interest, expectations, culture, work ethic as well, and certainly discuss as well soon enough in the relationship what's the collaboration model target, so as to avoid quid pro quo, and making sure as well that right from the beginning we are building a strong, transparent, and trustworthy relationship.
No, I love that, Veronique. And I think that expectation setting and the alignment at the beginning definitely makes for a more fruitful and smoother partnership down the line. Wanted to go into our second key point. I think I would be remiss and maybe even negligent not to talk about the current situation with COVID-19 and how the pandemic has altered the dynamic in the healthcare industry. I'm sure in each of your organizations and respective teams, you've been facing the need to rapidly adapt to these changes. And I just wanted to take the time to understand from each of your perspectives, what have been some of the opportunities that might have arisen from this? What have been some of the challenges, and what are the learnings that you're taking away for next year and beyond? And Veronique, we'll start with you for this one.
Yes. So of course, COVID is a big topic, and first, it has impacted people's life in many aspects, health for sure, but also professional, family life, financial situations, with strong collateral impact on health, even not COVID itself. We don't have a clear understanding yet, about the impact on COVID on mental health, after this crisis. But what we all can see and hear about is the exponential increase of people suffering from depression. And we can see it as well in market trends, of the antidepressant market, of the multivitamin market, which has significantly increased, during that period of time. So that's one thing. The second thing is that COVID has for sure created new needs and expectations, from the sanitary situation and from the lockdown as well. And this is accelerating for sure the digital transformation. The number of people who are working from home will never be the same after this crisis than it was before. The number of people shopping online neither, and the same for the number of people using digital healthcare service. If we look at few examples, so online shopping is of course one obvious one, and as we are talking about the Singapore events, the recent sales figure from the Double 11, events speaks for themselves. I think we have been talking about 800 million consumers joining the festival, 250,000 brands. I saw that 20 seconds past midnight on the 11th, there were 600,000 orders on Tmall coming every single second. So that's absolutely huge. But it's not only online shopping sales; it's also many other digital areas which have been impacted. And I was looking at a recent survey which was pointing out, especially remote monitoring, self-testing, symptom checking, data analytics, and of course telehealth and teleconsultation, which are also we are looking at very closely as well from a consumer healthcare perspective. In this specific market, I think COVID has, developed the market by a decade. It's a 25 billion euro market today. It's expected to be 55 billion in five years' time. And for sure, from a consumer healthcare viewpoint, it's a great opportunity really to create and to accelerate an entry ticket to our brands ecosystem, to engage consumer and to create less dependency as well to a healthcare professional in a way. So yes, huge impact on the industry because all this change triggers as well the need on our side to accelerate the digital transformation, make sure we have the right people, develop the right capabilities to address the best business strategy and our consumer needs.
Great, thanks, Veronique. Wanted to push over to Rachel to see, I guess from the pharmaceutical perspective, how COVID has affected your business, and I guess what are the key learnings that you're looking to take into the future as well? Currently on mute. I think you're trying to unmute yourself. Yeah. Maybe Lance, we'll go to you while Rachel will unmute herself. So Lance, any perspectives? I mean, within the diagnostic space, there's certainly going to be a change within patients going to clinics and hospitals, for example. So would love to hear a bit more about some of your learnings as well.
Yeah, I guess I'd perhaps put it into three buckets, and I'll keep it concise. But we've got the impact on the business, and it's exactly what you described. Is we had hospitals reducing their services very, very significantly, so that impacted a lot of the diagnostic industry companies and medical device companies as well. So there's that impact, and then the question is, from a commercial perspective, is there an opportunity to participate in balancing those financial losses out with selling a COVID test, for example, or COVID specific supplies that you might not have been able to in the past. So there's the impact on the sector itself. I think the other elements really could perhaps be described around focus within the Roche organization, mobilizing our entire R&D teams across different functions within the organization across the world to build COVID tests in record time was just something quite phenomenal, and we've never seen it anything like that. And it was a example of focusing an organization to one singular common goal. And then the other piece I go is collaboration again, collaboration across borders, collaboration with government officials to make sure that we could get freight and key products from point of manufacture into the hands of the clinicians when they need it. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that 70% of global freight travels on passenger aircraft, not freight aircraft. So when in the early days of the pandemic, when the airlines stopped flying, we couldn't move product around. We couldn't get the innovative tests, the analyzers into the countries that we needed to. So collaboration with government officials and of course regulators as well is something that has come up. Sometimes that's worked well. Those collaborations have worked well. Sometimes it's shone a spotlight on the need for more collaboration moving forward.
Absolutely. I think we've momentarily lost Rachel. I think she'll be rejoining soon. She just joined.
Here we go.
I will wait a few seconds. Rachel, can you hear us?
I can. My
great.
My power cut out on me.
Perfect timing. So Lance just concluded his COVID-19 response, and wanted to shoot it over to you and how you guys have been dealing with the changes.
Yeah. So apologies if I end up repeating anything that Lance may have said, but I think what Veronique had said, it captured it a lot about just that there's been such a huge step change, and there's been such an impact across the world. But I think what has, I've just been constantly amazed about how we could think and adapt in this new environment, just from a whole holistic possibility, and thinking around there's real opportunity, particularly from a healthcare perspective, about how we can reimagine healthcare. How can we also think around the sustainability to have a longer term impact on healthcare systems. I was just also wanted to just share a very specific example about, which was actually with a partnership that happened in the Philippines around the type of thing that we're talking about, around how can technology help to enable during the situation in COVID. So we had, as you know, of course, people were not wanting to go to hospitals because of being concerned that they would actually get infections and so on. and cancer patients, that's, most critical for them, that then how do they actually get their treatment? So we had, through some patient support programs, some breast cancer patients who still needed their treatments, and we were able to partner with a company called Zenya, and they were able to provide like the technological platform to allow for treatment to be able to happen, closer to the patient's home or in the patient's home, by having sort of the virtual platform to arrange for to connect the physician with the patient and so on. And so it's technologies like this, which, yes, maybe have been there in the background before, giving us an opportunity of like how we could collaborate in that setting with a startup who had a very similar mission. Their mission is around delivering quality, affordable, accessible medical health and wellness care in the most convenient way possible. And ours is around, doing now what patients need next. That's from a pharma and a diagnostics perspective. So when you put those two companies together, and then there's a possibility of being able to then bring the treatment to the home, and I'm interested to sort of then see, how that collaboration can continue. So I think this opportunity where we've seen in certain countries around like Thailand and Hong Kong, or virtual clinics, or as I said before, around what are the possibilities of where we're looking at wearables being, tracking and monitoring patients' well-being. I think there's just this opportunity now for us to take some of those things forward, but then think around how can we apply that to make things much more sustainable as we move forward, but also have a better view, a clearer 360 view of a patient when it comes to healthcare as well. So I guess I'm looking at it a lot with the lens of what was the opportunity that's actually come through, this really challenging year that we've all been through so far.
Got it. So we have time for one final quick question to conclude this panel. I know that we did want to talk about cultural change and corporate innovation culture within each of the organizations, but I think you guys did touch upon that in the first question when you were talking about startup partnerships. So I want to move on to a question that I love, and if you guys can briefly touch on this, I would love to hear about your opinion of the big tech players, such as Amazon, which recently announced their pharmaceutical strategy, Apple, who's been with the Apple Watch, and many other investments they've been making going into the health space, as well as Google with Verily, or I guess I should say Alphabet with Verily as part of one of their subsidiary companies. So are you guys, what is your perspective on the big tech players, big kind of putting their roots into the healthcare market? Does this excite you? Does this frighten you? I want to get your perspective there. I guess, Rachel, we can start with you very briefly.
Yeah, I think there's it's opportunity. It's thinking around, like, as we have this intersection between digital and biological medicine coming together, and as I said, it brings with it a more holistic view of a patient, and I think with that, we're sort of thinking, okay, it doesn't make sense for us to start from scratch, and there's many players that you haven't mentioned, that there's big players as well that we see in Asia Pacific, companies like Tencent that have a big foothold in China as well, where we're already thinking about how we're working together there. So I see that there's different things that we need to think about, regulations and how these companies enter into this space, but at the same time, I think there's opportunity for us to come together and collaborate as well.
Right. Veronique, any thoughts here? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. No, I think I
thought we were going to get through a whole panel without that happening, but
I am completely aligned with this view. I think there are fields for sure, innovation and tech, where for sure tech players are better qualified and have a higher legitimacy, vis-a-vis consumers. But there are also fields for sure where we are more legitimate. and not only when it comes to severe pathologies. So I think I strongly believe as well in partnering, really building on mutual benefits of the two worlds. Innovation and tech indeed on one side, and on the other hand, as we were just discussing, the pharma medical, but also regulatory expertise, the consumer, the market knowledge that pharma player can bring in the end to offer a better world to our patients and consumers. I think that's clearly the way forward.
Great. I love the optimistic tone to this. And Lance, I'll let you conclude the question and without the panel.
I think we're all violently aligned, right? Yeah, it's an opportunity. I said at the very beginning, there's so much to be done in health, and there's so much more to learn. Not all the tools are established yet. Not all the tools are known yet. I welcome the big players. It will only open up more opportunity.
Right. I think it's just combining the core strengths of each organization to find, similar to when you want to work with startups. I guess this opportunity lies with the big tech players as well, as Rachel mentioned with Tencent, for example. And I wish we definitely had more time. I think we could talk for another 30 minutes, honestly. Maybe we'll kind of set this up again for future demo days, but it's been a pleasure speaking with each of you guys. I hope our audience got a lot of takeaways from this, and thank you guys for your time.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Bye, guys.